Are you struggling financially at the moment? Struggling to put food on the table for your family, or having to choose between what to do and how to stretch the cash? Well, you're not alone. Poverty is a real problem in this country, and this pandemic has just made things a lot worse. But as Asians, do we look down on people who need help? And does it help when people like footballer Marcus Rashford admit that he himself was poor and knows what it's like to have very little money? Well, one charity is trying to address that stigma by getting food to young families that need it. They're called U-Cubes and contain more than just food. Shabnam Mahmood's been to Southall in London to find out more.
Baked beans and I think tomato tins that we got.
Communities in Southall coming together to pack and distribute food supplies to local people affected by the coronavirus crisis.
I find it really embarrassing.
For many families, there is a stigma and embarrassment about relying on food aid. Jampal Bazran is from the charity Southall Community Alliance.
I wouldn't call it pride, but a lot of people are anxious about being the recipients of something free. You know, they've worked all their lives. They come from cultures where they believe hard work pays off, and now a lot of them are having to face up to a reality where they have no jobs. We have high levels of local deprivation. So what we're trying to do is take the sting out of that.
Start at the back with the cheese for the vegetarians so that they all get some.
They're replacing shopping bags with specially designed boxes filled not just with food, but educational items too. Jim Rai is from the Tej Kohli Foundation, who are behind the idea.
People feel that there's a stigma attached to accepting charity, and especially young kids, and it sticks with them for life. So what we are trying to achieve is taking away that stigma, so they feel a sense of purpose, they feel good about themselves. They don't see it as a charity, it's more of a hand up as opposed to a hand out.
Once packed, the boxes are delivered to homes across the region, from teenagers
Oh, it's very nice. Wow! Thank you very much.
to young children.
What's inside?
Check what's inside.
Harjeet Kaur and her husband both lost their jobs during lockdown. They have no access to benefits and are dependent on donations.
The food bank, when I go there, we have to be a queue outside. It is embarrassing because people watching you. Because me and my husband, we never used to be like that. And all of a sudden, of the coronavirus, because we both not working, no money.
The UQ box might help, but Harjeet's pain and shame from having to use food banks is all too clear.
When you see your children don't have nothing. Nothing means nothing. We can't even afford food for the kids.
The volunteers say they'll continue delivering supplies in boxes to reduce the stigma for those forced to rely on charity.
That was Shabnam Mahmood there, who's been to Southall in London. Now, let's talk a little bit about this. I want to hear from you on the programme. How do you feel about the stigma of people who are unable to feed their young families? Is that something that is still embarrassing to talk about for people, even though we know how difficult times are and how many people are struggling right now? Do you know people who are struggling in silence? Get in touch. I want to hear your stories. I want to hear how you are helping, and I also want to know what people can do to help as well. If you want to remain anonymous, that's absolutely fine. But get in touch with me, 03459 440 445. You can also text 81869 and WhatsApp the programme, 07920 500 200. Right, joining me now is Jim Rai from the Tej Kohli Foundation, the charity behind the initiative, and also Louisa McGeehan, who is the Director of Policy, Rights and Advocacy at the Child Poverty Action Group as well. Thank you both for coming onto the programme. Jim, I'm going to come to you first of all. Sure. We heard a little flavour of what's in the boxes, but just explain what the boxes are and how they're different to other parcels that are being helping out other people.
Yeah. Well, firstly, thank you for inviting me. The boxes, they're called, it's an initiative from the Tej Kohli Foundation, The boxes are called UCube boxes. And the idea behind it is to give young people a completely new experience. As I said in the interview earlier, it should be seen as more of a hand up as opposed to a hand out. And we've included within the boxes not just nutrition, but mental stimulation, some educational material. No one will know what's in the box until they open it. So we're trying to repackage an experience for young people to take away some of that stigma that's attached to it. And of course, with any charity, when you're receiving it, certainly within the Southern Asian community, it's difficult. It's a difficult one for them to get their mind round. But if you can make that experience a more painless, less shameless type of experience, then that's what we've tried to do.
Yeah, sounds really forward thinking there with the whole trying to stimulate people as well, mentally keep them active. Why is that so important?
It's absolutely important. Certainly, what's happened is within the Tej Kohli Foundation, we've picked up that the fact that coronavirus has only highlighted the problem. It's always been there, and it's going to get worse, unfortunately. And mental health, certainly within children, can scar a child's development for life. And we are at a stage when everyone has to step up, we feel, and in coming up with a solution and finding ways to make that less impactful on that child's life. So it's very, very important that everyone comes together with ideas like UCube, like the Tej Kohli Foundation has. And I feel that it's going to lessen the impact for a child as they grow up and not feel like they're I hate to use the word, but a charity case.
Why is that important for them to not feel like that?
Just in their future development, mental health in terms of anxiety and depression manifests in many different ways in terms of the relationship they have with their family, in terms of the relationship they have with their school, and just the development of a child. And if you're going to look to create a stronger community, a stronger force, you've got to start at the basics. And the basics are making sure that they have good nutrition, strong nutrition, and healthy mental stability. Absolutely important for that child's development in the future when they go for a job, how they deal in terms of their relationships with people. All of that has to start from the very basics.
I'm sure there are lots of people out there who can relate to what Jim's saying. Get in touch. You can remain anonymous. I'd love to hear from you. 81869. Louisa, I want to bring you in here on this. A lot of what Jim's saying there about mental development and keeping young people in particular active. What would you say on that from Child Poverty Action Group's perspective?
Well, I mean, what we would normally be saying were we in normal times is, the whole issue described as holiday hunger. We'd be saying, actually, what we need to do for kids in the holidays is to put on activity centres. We need to focus it on things that are fun to do and, things that get kids active and just have food as part of that, because we're so close to getting, as you said, really quite stigmatised around the huge number of well-meaning and good people coming forward saying children are hungry, we want to feed the children. But the area it's so much more complex than that for people. And one of the things, while people have been thinking about sort of food and hunger issues as a result of coronavirus, is, as Jim said, it's the norm for some families before this happened, and it will be, for even more probably after this happened. So, I mean, one of the nice things I think about the UCube is that, presented in a box, it looks a bit like a gift. So to a child receiving that, it looks like they're getting something special. And I really like the fact that the art activity stuff is in there as well, because this is one of the things we found. We were doing a big survey with families around how they were dealing with learning in lockdown during school closures. And one of the big divides was between those who were better off, who had a whole load of technical equipment to help with learning. They had all the IT stuff, they had the internet, but what they also had was art supplies, writing materials, all of these things at home that some kids were sent home without, and just didn't even have that sort of basics for a bit of creativity. So there are ways of doing it, I think. But one of the things, I mean, while so many people and people who regularly volunteer in food banks do so out of kindness and because they want to support people, I think, as your intro said, is quite right, that we have to stop and think about what it's like to be a recipient of this sort of help, and what that's about, really, because, you know, there's very few people, I would say, who have a problem accessing food in as much as our shops are full of it. And actually, the real problem is money. And I mean, that's why we campaign on this and we say, actually, you know, families need more cash available to them to be able to buy this themselves, because it's not just about the food, it's about paying the rent, paying the bills, and all of those other things you want your kids to have or they need to have. So, you know, I understand totally why you know, people are motivated to provide food, but we would like everyone to join with us, I think, and campaign for actually let's increase child benefit now. We know that it hasn't kept pace with what it needs to be. It's lost a huge amount of its value, and that's something that goes directly to every child in need. So it's a really unstigmatizing way of getting sort of support out to families who really need it now.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Louisa. I'd love for you to have a little chat to Jim about all this as well. Jim, listening to Louisa there, clearly say that it comes as like a gift. That's something that's quite positive. Was that part of the idea behind having them in boxes like that rather than a bag?
Absolutely. As I said, repackaging and the way you present something, you can take food in a carrier bag and the child knows that there's food in there and know they've got to eat. There was a story recently where the Tej Kohli Foundation were involved in this, where food was given and colouring books were given and other things like Louisa said, and they went straight to the colouring book straight away. They felt so excited by that, and that's so important for a child who's living in a poor community or living in cramped conditions, has something additional than just knowing that they may get a tub of yogurt or some pasta or something else. Those things are important, but what makes that child's spirits lifted are things like colouring books, and that's what they'll go to straight away. And the element of surprise, they don't know what's going to be in there, so they're waiting for it. They're not hiding from it. They're not thinking, oh my God, they're going to be bringing food parcels. It's something that you know, it releases certain endorphins in a person that's good for them.
I'd like the two of you to talk to each other actually a little bit about the stigma, the embarrassment, the shame. What have you found? What's been, Louisa, in general, from an overview point of view, but also, Jim, your experience of dealing with people firsthand as well? Is there this stigma, this shame out there about accepting these gifts, as you're putting them, or accepting charity, actually coming to terms with the fact that they are struggling?
Yeah, we've done some work with great academic at UCL in London, Rebecca O'Connell, and she worked on a study talking to children and young people as well as their parents around kind of poverty and food issues, and that's called Living Hand to Mouth, and it's available on the CPAG website. And it's really interesting. Some of those children's views about it were, you know, it does feel stigmatizing. Kids talk about going to food banks and, you know, and just the difficulties that they have and how it feels. I mean, you know, not an issue here, but I mean, one of the kids that always sticks with me from that study was saying that, you know, within school food stuff, everybody knew the kids who were getting the free school meal because they had limited things they were allowed to have, and how that felt. So although, you know, and I have to say, I have a really personal issue against when people talk about, you know, we must feed the children, because it sounds like they're dehumanized, and it sounds like, you know, we're back in Victorian times with, you know, kind of that sort of charitable aid. So we do have to really think about how things will be received. And I mean, I think that's been done here, you know, nicely with UQ. I'm not quite sure how they're sort of getting out to kids, and whether kids can sort of choose to have them or whether they're sort of targeted.
This is the whole point, Louisa. I'm trying to get you two to talk to each other rather than going through me. So yeah, you know, let's have a little conversation about this as well. Sure. Jim, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, with the stigma that's attached, I mean, the child not receiving food. I mean, it's the family not receiving food. So, if by having UCube, it's not that's just one aspect of dealing with the overall problem. We recognize that, and that's one solution the Tej Kohli Foundation have come up with, which kind of resolves one issue. But the stigma attached is always going to be there. Certainly, I found from the South Asian communities, because they are not used to. They're used to giving more than receiving from. You know, it's part of the culture. Within the temples and everything else, it's part of who they are. And now with coronavirus and with all these other issues, the whole thing's turned on its head, and they are now having to receive. So the problem that we're going to have is, are they going to want to come out and identify themselves and say we need help, because of the embarrassment factor? And whichever ways that we can find holistically to try and help them identify themselves and say, we actually need help, we're going hungry. Because I've heard of parents going hungry just so that the kids can have the food. And some days the mother might have food on the Monday, the father might have food on the Tuesday, just so that kids can get their food. So we've got to find solutions. And I'm guessing, Louisa, you've got the data, you've got the partnerships, and it's something that, you know, the Tej Kohli Foundation and yourselves, we can work together and find a common ground on how we can help.
That would be great. I mean, look me up after, and we can have a wider conversation as well offline. Because I think there is an awful lot that can be done. And what you're describing is absolutely right. We know that parents are going short themselves to try and protect their kids, and they think that their kids might not be aware of it, but then the kids actually are aware of it, and then they feel guilty. And all of these, you know, confusing and difficult feelings people have around kind of food and feeding your kids. It's such a fundamental thing for all communities.
So is the coronavirus exacerbating this issue, in your opinions, or is this merely highlighting what's already there when it comes to child poverty in the UK?
I think it's a bit of both, to be honest. I mean, already we had 4.2 million children growing up in poverty before the virus. Undoubtedly, those numbers will go up. And one of the things that's interesting is there has been, and you have to give the government credit for the huge amount of money it's put into supporting people, but with so many gaps already there, and as that support starts to pull away. So I think, you know, there's over 6 million people currently on a furlough scheme, and you know, we really hope those people do get to retain their jobs, but if not, they'll be you know, experiencing huge income drops.
Absolutely. And what's worrying about all of this is, it's unfortunate, but those 6 million people will not all be retaining their jobs. In fact, from what the data, a majority will be made redundant, and they will be experiencing things they've never experienced in their lives, in terms of coming forward to ask for food. You know, never in our lifetime have we experienced anything quite like this, and the impact is going to be major. And the reason why I'm raising this point is because collectively, every part of society are going to have to take this very seriously in terms of coming together as a collective to help out. There will definitely be a big need for people to share the information. There can't be any territorial issues anymore. All charities have to come under one umbrella, because we may be servicing certain parts of London a bit too much, where they have choices. And at the end of the day, there's parts of the whole of the UK where people aren't getting any food, or very little. There was a child who came into one of the centres the other day and asked for two pots of yogurt, and that he asked for two because that was going to be his food for the evening, and that's going to become a reality for us. And now it's time, you know, for us to all open. I'm grateful to you for having us on this program, and highlighting this issue, because it's going to become our new reality.
If there's anybody out there who can relate, who's listening to Jim, Louisa here, what are your thoughts? 81869. Is this something that you are going through yourself now? Is this something that you're having difficulty to open up to others about? If you have any questions or what you need to do to reduce that stigma, let me know, and maybe Louisa can speak to you, give you a little bit of experience from what she's gone through at the Poverty Action Group about what they've seen and how people can be helped. It would be great to have you on the programme. 81869 to text or WhatsApp 07920 500 200. Last week, in particular, we spoke about Marcus Rashford, who is the Man United striker who has basically forced the government to do a U-turn on keeping free school meals going and extending that to the summer holiday period as well. But one of the things that I wanted to focus on is his interview in which he opened up about the struggle that he had as a child, the poverty that he faced, and also people saying to me on this programme afterwards, young people, one who was 15 himself, saying someone as cool as Marcus Rashford is talking about this. It means other young boys, and he was a boy, and he was stressing the fact that this is something about boys trying to be macho, and the fact that Marcus Rashford was talking about this would hopefully make it more acceptable for others to actually acknowledge and talk about this as well within their own groups. First of all, what were your thoughts on Marcus Rashford? And then also, is this something that you think boys have more of a difficult time coming to terms with?
Gosh, well, if I go first, what an amazing young man, really, and what a brilliantly socially responsible thing to do. And I think it just, his story in his own words, the bravery behind that was immense. So, we're keen to work with him some more if we can, because we just thought he's awesome. And it shouldn't have taken him to persuade the government to do what was only sensible, because we're not in normal times, and we need those kind of measures to continue while they're helping. And they're not perfect, but they're really, really helping some families. And it's the value of £90 per child over the summer holidays. So it's going to make a big difference to families. And I would say, what we need to do, I don't know whether it's a gender thing, I don't know, but partly what we need to do is probably more young people to talk about their experiences in a way that we can push government more, because ultimately that's where the responsibility lies, and that's why we have a social security system, is that nobody should be growing up in poverty short of any of the things that they need in what is an affluent country in 2020, when we've got the resources there. We just need to decide to change it. So I guess we need a big youth movement of boys and girls speaking out, helping us, talk to your MP, hold them to account, so ask them what they're doing to fix it, because together we can all fix this problem, I think.
Yeah.
Jim, do you think Marcus Rashford opening up about it actually is going to reduce the stigma for younger people a little bit more?
For sure. There's no doubt about it, and like Louisa said, it's such a brave thing that he's done, and he's come out and he presented the argument with such sophistication, and he got the government to make a U-turn, which was amazing. That one young guy who's come from that poor community has been able to do that. But for me, I think there's another issue here, which is everyone's focused on the free school meals, and it's what else can we do now that we've identified this problem during the holiday hunger and during when they're off school. UCube as an initiative should be the start of a wider initiative, because it's not just about nourishing the body, it's about nourishing the mind. And therefore, UCube, the Tej Kohli Foundation, we would like to try and bring in more initiatives like that, which are not just focused on food, very, very important, but mental health is equally as important. And that's something that we need to start championing at the same time.
Is that something that we need to focus on more, Louisa? Mental health? Is that, or are you just focused at the moment on feeding people as well?
Well, no, when you look at the impact of poverty on a child
The
and
mental
in a
health
family.
aspect is very important as well, isn't it? Louisa, it's been
Yeah,
really good
so-
talking to you. Thank you so much for your time. Louisa McGeehan from Child Poverty Action Group, and also Jim Rai from the Tej Kohli Foundation as well. It's been really good having the pair of you on The Big Debate today.